Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbeville. One common thread that runs through all veterans is pride in their service, and even more pride to serve along other brave soldiers or sailors. They come no prouder than Captain David P. Marion, military advisor, serving in the jungles of Vietnam during the hottest time of that war, 1968 and 1969. Aggie class of 65 and proud bass drummer of the Fightin' Texas Aggie Band, David Marion was an Army officer, but as you will hear, perhaps his most memorable service was that alongside Navy swift boats, alongside sailors who saved his life. Captain Marion, it's a pleasure to have you here on Veterans of the Valley. We've got so much to get to in your career, your military career. You come to Texas A&M in 1961, kind of a rude awakening. You arrived from Spur, Texas at Texas A&M, and there's a hurricane that just hit the coast named Carla.
That's right.
You didn't like the weather very much when you got here, right?
I never saw so much water in my life, Tom. We came out of the drought of the 50s out there in the red rolling plains and the cow-calf country and hit that headwind about Abilene, and boy, it started getting wet about Temple, and by the time we got here, it was like a drowned rat you couldn't see.
Entered Texas A&M in 1961, and you go through. You were in the Fightin' Texas Aggie Band as a bass drummer. I know that was something you're very proud of, and still proud to be a member of the band, actually, as an alumni, right?
We are a part of the Texas Aggie Band Association, and when the old man bands forms up out there, I still strap on the bass drum and go. We know that the spirit of Aggie land, this heartbeat there is from the drum. The pulse of the spirit of Aggie land, of course, is the Fightin' Texas Aggie Band. But that bass drum is where the heartbeat comes from.
Indeed it is. Something you and I have in common. I played the bass drum in my high school military band.
That's what I understood.
Indeed. You finished A&M in January of 1966, but you got a little gap there because the Army doesn't want you until May of 66, so you need to find some employment, and you were sort of at the right time at the right place there. Talk about that.
That's right. Dr. A.B. Wooten told me that A&M just wasn't quite proud of me yet, Mr. Marion, in August when I was trying to get out of here, that I hadn't taken his particular course, which was Ag Eco 422, which is land economics, the appraisal of real estate. It's a course that I use probably as much as anything except for farm and ranch management in my later career with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But because of that delay, I didn't get out in 65, and that caused me to have a later entry date into Fort Benning, Georgia. And all of the classes ahead of me, our class went to the 198th and the 199th Light Infantry Brigade, straight over to Fort Polk, and then over to what I call the live fire exercise in Southeast Asia.
Right.
My class was split. A third went to Korea, and the rest of us went to Germany, which was the first replacements that had arrived in Germany after they started drawing down sergeants and captains and majors. They were all headed to Southeast Asia back in 66, 65.
Before you went to Vietnam, you were stationed in Munich, Bavaria, Germany. Talk about your service there.
Yes, I completed basic officer school at at Fort Benning, Benning School for Boys, we call it. Went through airborne jump school there in June and July, which wasn't real smart. I thought I might get into an airborne brigade over there with the 8th Division, but wound up in the 24th Mech Infantry Division down at Munich, Bavaria, Germany. That's an interesting part of our family history because my daddy in 1942, right after the Pearl Harbor event, was shipped out and joined the 24th Infantry Division at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii in the 13th Flying Jackass Field Artillery. So he was in the 24th Division, and then I wind up over there in what's called the Victory Division. I served as a platoon leader for about 6 months, and then as people began to make captain, they were shortly on orders, and they were out of there heading for Vietnam. And my company commander, Lieutenant Felice, he got orders right after he got his railroad tracks. And so as a second lieutenant shavetail with about 6 months on the battalion, I became company commander of A Company, 2nd of the 21st Infantry, with some platoon sergeants, some E6s, and one sergeant first class that was my actual platoon sergeant when I led 3rd Platoon. And I have to give Sergeant Hippenstill a lot of credit for my career because He was a trooper, he was a soldier. Back to Ben's Tom, he was a Marine in Korea that walked out from Chosun, but he was one squared away sergeant. And he took this little shaved-tail and took care of the business over there to convert me into a platoon leader. And so as we go through the process there, people are coming in. I was the 13th officer in that battalion. Should have been 32 of us there. And we were meeting ourselves on the duty roster and pulling details and duty all over Europe. But one thing about that, the experience that we gained as young officers, we were serving duty about 2 grades above where we were. And that helped a lot. We learned fast over there because we had to. I pulled the company commander slot until the colonel decided that he wanted a battalion executive officer. And at that time, I was the senior ranking first lieutenant in the battalion. So he pulled me out of the company and put me as his battalion executive officer.
Now this was in Germany still,
This
right?
is still in Germany.
Right,
This is in 1967.
Right.
And so we're going on into the fall of '67, and I get orders that we're going to go to Fort Riley, Kansas as the advance party for the rotation out of Germany of the first soldiers that were doing that, what was called Operation Reforger, which was simply moving one brigade from Germany, station it back in the States.
We need to go ahead and fast forward because the war is heating up, obviously, in Vietnam, and you are called. You head to California, and then August 2nd, 1968, you leave for Vietnam in Saigon as a military advisor there. Talk about, we're in Vietnam now, talk about what your duty was on the ground.
After I completed the training at Fort Bragg, North Carolina for advisor school, they somehow shipped me over to Defense Language Institute for language training in Vietnamese language, which was necessary because I wound up in a district assignment with the district chief that has both civic responsibility as well as military affairs, police, health, and all affairs, about like a county judge here back in Texas. General Westmoreland called what we did the Armed Peace Corps over there. But anyway, I arrived in Vietnam on the 4th day of August, 1968, right in about what they call the 3rd offensive of 1968. I didn't stay in Saigon very long because it seemed like they ran us through a chute pretty fast. And I wound up down in Con To, which is the headquarters of 4th Corps in the Delta, the Mekong Delta. They shipped me out over to Quien Hoa Province, which is about 40 miles south of Saigon and just below My To and Dong Tam, where the 2nd Brigade of the 9th Infantry Division operated out of. So I get into there, and Colonel Dunley goes through the briefing with me, and he sends me up to Truc Yang District to work with Major Saunders, who was the district senior advisor, as a break-in deal, just follow him around, kind of get oriented a little bit about what it was about to be a district advisor, observe how the operations went. I got up there, and on about the 2nd, 3rd day we were there, Sergeant Huddleston and I were assigned to go out with the regional Poplar Force that day for that mission. We went out, and that was my first experience with being shot at, for real. We had some
you
sniper
called it the wrong end of the bullet.
We had some sniper fire coming, and I wasn't launching the rounds. They were coming at us and zinging by, and that kind of popped a little bit, so I kind of perked up. Didn't have any problem with that. Coming back in, though, on the road back to the headquarters there at Truc Yang, we were on a hardtop road, one of the few that was actually open, and a sniper, a far sniper, what's called a distant shot, took a lucky shot at us, and the truck that I was riding in, they had me in the right front seat of the cab, no cover on it, but there's a post right here behind your head that attaches the canopy to it when you put it on. That round came zinging in and hit right back in the back of that post, right about where my ear was. If that old boy had known how to lead a deer or a jackrabbit, we might have had a little different discussion here, Tom. So that got my attention big time. We go back up there, and I spend a couple of weeks there, Then I'm called back into the province headquarters, and Colonel Dunley tells me that they've got assignment down in Ton Phu District. It's got some problems down there. Said we've got a little relationship difficulty going on between who was a captain down there that had been in the class with me, the advisor class there at Fort Bragg. He got there in May, and now this is September the 1st. I arrive in Ton Phu District, which is the far southeast district of Quinhua Province on the South China Sea, bounded by 2 rivers. So I've got water all around me. This is the rainy season, and again, Tom, I have never seen so much water since Hurricane Carla. It's wet, and there's a bunch down there. We get in there, and I get oriented to what we're doing a little bit. We take off on a mission shortly after I got there, up a road and out to a little outpost in Hamlet, and I spend a little time there dealing with some of the local merchants and trying to practice my Vietnamese and trying to buy some things from them, trying to get in good with them where they'd think it was a good idea. We spent a little too much time there, and the district chief got a little perturbed at me, wanting to hurry up, hurry up.
Right.
Well, as we were going back, there was a command detonated mine in the road, but our driver was varying the speed, and the guy that had the trigger on the mine couldn't judge that speed either. And that sucker went off right behind us. I was sitting on the back of the Jeep there, and so most of the stuff went up around to the back. I'm sitting kind of like this, and I've got a little souvenir from my glasses that that was about all I got, except for a bunch of mud and rock and crap that hit us.
Yep.
So we get on back in. This thing rocks on. That particular district chief had his way of fighting, and it was mostly defense and don't mess with them, and maybe they won't mess with us, and I didn't like that.
David, we need to move on, because I want to move on to really what I consider the most compelling part of your service, and that is talk to us about the combat operation that resulted in your bonding with the Swift Boat sailors. How did that all come about?
Well,
and then we're going to get on to what happened in 1995 when you found these guys.
To start with, Tom, the Swift boats had patrol areas on those 3 areas. We had out on the China Sea and the 2 rivers. Of course, they were in contact with us before this action takes place in February. So it really starts in October and November as we're beginning to get acquainted down there. They're on our radio net, so we're talking to these guys and bringing them in and up to the river banks and talking to them, dealing with them. And I asked the skipper, Lieutenant Keith Evans, one of the OICs out there, officer in charge, could he by chance haul Vietnamese troops down into the base area, because we were walking infantry and we had no transport. Well, he says, I'll check it out. He heads back up to to Cat Low, their base, and boy, that night we get a Roger back, says where you want to go and how many and when you want to do it. So that started the relationship. They also were firing harassment and interdiction fires for us all through that month. Well, the key thing that happened was in November, we got a change in district chief. Dai Huy Tit Bung Duc came in to become district chief there, and he had been in North Vietnam. He is a North Vietnamese, and had been a communist prisoner up there after the partition. Well, Dai Huy Duc had no love lost whatsoever for the VC, as you might imagine. So anyway, we get close coordination. The Navy is hauling us and moving us, firing for us, and number one thing is they let us clean out their refrigerator when the operation is over. So we had a very close working relationship with those sailors. I got to know them personally and individually, those officers in charge, when they would come in, because I would be with the maneuver element, and they would report to me to coordinate and be a liaison with them.
What happened that night in February that...
as we're getting ready to build a new outpost, this new district chief wants to push the VC away from us and get them where they can't fire rockets and mortars at us, and I thought that was the number one good idea. To do that, we had to secure the area, and we did that by moving in troops, sweeping the area, and then when we could gain the security advantage, we would build one of those French triangular outposts, a mud fort, and we were in the process of doing that in late January 1969. We had just received January 31st, a RF company that came in, brand spanking new company. So anyway, we've got intel from the Navy, from the Vietnamese and everybody else that people are infiltrating into our area down there, and they're moving in for what we know is going to be an attack.
Right.
I'm reading the intel, I'm getting it from the Vietnamese, the Navy is giving us the same stuff, that there's big movement coming into Ton Phu, and I'm pretty sure, I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure that that outpost at An Hoa, they don't like it, and somebody's going to try to take us out.
And you need some help, so
We're out
go
there.
ahead.
We have 2 men in there. It's a 2-man rule for the advisor team. And that night, on February the 2nd, Sergeant Barnett was out, slipped and fell on the rice paddy dike, and either broke or severely sprained his ankle. So he's out there and can't walk, and an infantry guy that can't walk is a liability. So back at the district headquarters where I was, we had a decision we had to make. We're either going to have to get out there and pull the 2 Americans out, or we had to figure out some way to get the injured sergeant out, and somebody was going to have to take his place. Well, there wasn't an infantry sergeant back there at the team. He was on leave, and I was volunteered to go.
So how did the swift boats come into this?
The
I
swift
need
boats,
to get to that.
the swift
Okay.
boats were on patrol up the river, and we had a brand new ensign, I find out 26 years later, that was in charge of that patrol boat.
Right.
They had strict orders that they were not supposed to leave the wide rivers at night, and certainly not alone.
Right.
But one of the Navy friends we had up at Cat Low, the operations officer, Lieutenant D'Amica, had told this ensign, now when you go down there to Ton Phu, says, don't you let anything happen to those advisors, they're our friends. Well, about 1:15 in the morning, Charlie opened up on us with mortars, 60 millimeter mortar, and that first round hit on that incomplete berm that was about chest high to me, right above my left ear. And that woke me up.
And the swift boats, out of this, we need to get, we've got about 7 minutes left to go in the show now.
The swift boats were
so.
upriver when I got on the radio, started hollering, Uniform Sierra in contact, fire mission, Uniform Sierra in contact. Well, this swift boat answers the call, but this is a new crew and they're not sure where to go. They finally find the inlet, they get in the canal because they cannot meet the target. Their range is too far. The only way to get there, they have to come up in this canal. I don't know any of this in 1969. We're being hit from the left side by a battalion-sized attack that our RF company is trying to handle, and our 26 men in the PF platoon are fully occupied. We're firing artillery and trying to hold our own. About that time, the VC attack, which was a little bit disorganized, opened up a second flanking attack to our right, which was to the south. And boy, that caused all kinds of trouble because we didn't have anything we could put down there on that south. We were fully occupied with what we were contending with on the north flank. That swift boat answered that call. They managed to get upriver and then upstream in that canal, and they don't know how long it took them to get there, and I don't know either, and it was a long time, and it was too long, I told them. When they got there, they opened up with the first round, and that first 81 mortar round landed right smack in the front lead element of that second flanking attack. They must have hit the leader, because when that round hit, that attack just kind of disintegrated out there. You could see the disorganization. We could see movement out there and could actually observe because some of our artillery rounds were firing flares. When I gave that Navy swift boat, target correct, fire for effect, give me all you got and give it to me now, was the communication to them. They started dropping rounds down that tube just as fast as they could. We find out later in '95 they overheated the barrel and they violated a few rules of engagement and a few other Navy rules, and some of the rules, find out, were actually court-martial offenses. So anyway, they break up that attack on our flank. We're holding our own up there on the left flank, and by about an hour later, We pretty well handled the situation, defeated the attack, and we believe the VC are now trying to withdraw and recover from the battlefield.
And the swift boat has gone up the river, and you don't hear from them again until 26 years later. We'll talk about that in a minute. But David, right now I want to go to some pictures.
All right.
From some of your service in Vietnam, and we're going to go through these quickly because, as is so unfortunate each time, we do run out of time. But
Okay.
if we could go ahead and go to this this first picture, talk about what we're looking at right here.
Okay, right there you've got PCF number 98. That's a swift boat that was hauling our troops, and they're offloading the Vietnamese soldiers that I fought, lived, and some of them died with me. Those are Vietnamese RF troops, which in Texas we'd call that a National Guard outfit.
Okay.
Poorly trained and not well equipped. They did not have M16s.
Now this is you on the left.
That is me on the left, and that's what we call the Freedom Bird, Tom. That's on July the 16th, 1969, as I'm leaving my post, bed and relieved, and I'm heading out for the big PX back in America, but that's the Freedom Bird.
Talk about this picture.
These are the little guys that fought with us the night that we almost got wiped out. That's the RF 246 company. There was brand spanking new, fresh guys. You'll notice they've only got carbines. We were outgunned, we were outmanned about 4-1, and they fought like hell.
You're obviously very proud to serve with them. There's no doubt about that.
They were great fighters.
Now this was
This is
gentleman.
Tip Lung Duc. That is Dai Wee Duc, my counterpart, who unfortunately after the communists took him into a re-education camp. And we have information that Dai Wee Duc died of dysentery in 1977.
Here's a picture you just showed me this morning.
Oh yes, this one is a fantastic story. This is the Navy supply. That's cold milk, Tom, out in the Mekong Delta when it's about 110, and orange in my hand. That's me on the left there.
This is the swift boat crew.
This is my crew. That's PCF 56. That's Ensign Frankie standing there, the guy with the beard. And the tall guy on the far side, that's Tex. He's the 50 caliber gunner.
And what I'm gonna do now, before I show the next picture, I want to go back to you, and I want you to talk about, in the little time we have left, about what happened in 1995. It was a reunion of these swift boats in Washington, D.C.
That's correct. In 1995, in June, we had a reunion when we had found 2 swift boats down in Panama. They brought those boats up, but the Navy did, and one of them now, PCF-1, is at the Navy Historical Society in the Washington Navy Yard. This caused us to gather all hands on deck and have a reunion, the first one that they had to dedicate that swift boat. As we were up there meeting and greeting and doing with people, I wound up joining the Swift Boat Sailors Association as a charter member, Tom. Airborne infantry, but I'm a charter member, and they consider me one of them.
Indeed.
As that reunion got underway, I kept asking the question, were any of you guys on the rivers February 2, 3, 69? Do anybody know the crew that was down there? Because I'd been looking for these guys and nobody could tell me where they were. Finally, on Sunday, as we were leaving the hotel, going down for breakfast, there was a table and there was 2 spaces. My daughter was there with me. And so I sat down and started asking the question, were any of y'all there? And sure enough, one of the guys recognized part of what I was asking. He said to Ensign Frankie, you know, Bill, we were in that area about that time. Wasn't that us? That sounds kind of like maybe what we did. And Bill started talking to me. Bill Frankie is the ensign. And so we are talking back and forth, repeating the radio communications between the 2 of us, me in the outpost, him in the swift boat. And there's no way, Tom, that we could mistake, because there's only the 2 of us that know some of that exchange, and some of it I'm not real proud of because it was pretty fluent Navy French.
So 26 years later, you found the guys, and we showed the picture a second ago. I don't know, can we go back to it? There it is again. And there's the fellows that 26 years later you found.
We found part of the crew. We found 2 of the crew members, and it happened to be Sunday, the 17th of June, on Father's Day.
Wow.
That's Way Sims on the left. He was the guy running the mortar crew, and the one on the right there, yeah, well, it'll be on the left the way you're seeing it. That's Ensign Frankie, 26 years later, and that's Daiwi Kovan Marion in the middle there. So we finally managed up and found him. And the reason we had so much trouble is they didn't file an action report. They filed no paperwork on this thing because they were facing a court martial and a board of inquiry if they had been caught off the river by themselves in the situation that they put themselves in. But they tell me, even today, knowing what they know about the hazard, knowing what they know about the gun, knowing what they did when they got that hang fire, they'd all do it again.
Your story would take hours and hours and days to tell, but that's all the time we have for this. And I thank you very, very much for your service, David Marion, and thank you for being here. I
One
appreciate
thing,
it.
Tom, we want them to know that we fought the battles and we held the line, and not a single place fell after we made the stand in Vietnam. The communists were stopped, not another country.
Absolutely, and thank you for your service. There is that natural rivalry between Army and Navy, but that mostly plays itself out on the football field each fall. To Army Captain David Marion, it's no rivalry, it's a brotherhood. We salute the service of Vietnam veteran David P. Marion and salute all veterans. And thanks to our underwriter, First National Bank. I'm Tom Turbeville. Join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.